Hello and welcome to Family DynamiKs. I'm Katherine.
I'm Ed.
And John.
And today we have our mom with us again to tell us some more stuff. Hi, Mom.
I'm here too. Hi. It's Mary.
It's Mary. There's Mary, everybody. Okay, so I hope I'm remembering correctly. When we last had you in by yourself, because we had you in with your sister. That was very fun hearing you with Therese via remote. That was that technically difficult, or did you guys seem like that was okay?
No, it was wonderful because I found out things about her I didn't even know.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, we did too. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Things about her, things about you. Okay, so if I'm remembering correctly, back to when we had you in as a solo guest. Did we get through high school? I think we got a little bit of high school, maybe into college, but I'm not positive. Do either of you boys remember?
I mean, we bounced around, but as far as like the full-blown chronological, I think we ended right around high school. Because we were just about to like delve into the restaurants and working behind the counter, and they were like, oh wait, hold on, let's save starting that topic with your sister because we're going to have her on soon. And then I do believe that we actually talked about you guys working behind the counter. So even with her sister, I think we've still kind of slowed down right around high school.
Okay, and we definitely got some high school stuff from Therese. Was that the split campus with the
yes,
the girls on one side and the boys on one?
Was certainly like that when I was there, even more so.
Right, but there was enough of a gap age-wise. You weren't there together.
No, she was 7 years younger.
Right, so. And you were even ahead of your grade, age-wise.
And she was probably a little behind. I'm not sure. Because she did, I think, kindergarten first and then did it again.
Gotcha.
Because the twins had their own language.
So,
right. That's a common theme amongst a lot of these episodes is, well, kindergarten twice.
Yeah.
Or what was Ethan's, a pre-5 something?
Oh, yeah. Well, I think that was just pre-K kindergarten.
It was like kindergarten without homework.
Right. Which I prefer the no homework model just in general across the board. Let's all get behind that.
Nope.
Okay, so high school.
Yes.
Was that the Sandy years or college?
No, that was definitely college because having the name Mary became more burdensome in high school. Like 4 of us would turn our heads around if somebody yelled Mary.
You mean it became more burdensome in college? When you got to college, there were so many Marys that you decided to switch it? No, you switched it.
I didn't even wait to find out. I figured we're going to do this
You'd
again.
had enough.
No thanks.
It was getting bad by high school, and you're like, never mind.
Yep.
Got it. Okay, so high school. Anything significant that seems to pop out at you?
I was just thinking, when I started high school, I was a year behind everybody else in age, younger. And I was 4'8 and a half.
You were smaller and younger.
So I was just, one of the shortest people there. And I remember I became very good friends with a girl who was that height and never grew anymore.
Oh.
She's tiny. Really big personality, though.
Well, I remember regarding height, you definitely told me that you grew like 4 inches in college, which I had high hopes that maybe I would grow in college, which then did not pan out.
I don't think it was 4 inches, but it was significant.
I think there's a trick to that story, which has never quite been revealed. When did you, let's not jump ahead, but there's an age difference between your expectation of the college years when you might still be growing and her starting earlier. So then I'm thinking maybe she still had her growth spurt up to like 19, whereas you're like from 19 to 24. What do I got? Nothing.
Pretty much after 13, I had nothing. Okay, so go on, Mom. So you're one of the tiniest.
Yes. And made friends with this other tiny girl. And we had a very interesting and strange freshman year.
As the 2 tinies.
Yeah, as the 2 tinies. She ended up, I've got to tell you this, she ended up running the Iditarod in Alaska.
Wow.
And training sled dogs.
Wow.
She's so adventurous.
Do we have a name? Do you remember a name or just tiny lady?
Oh my gosh, I can see her right this minute. I can't remember her name. Sorry.
Jill of the Wild.
Yeah, Jill was a friend of ours. I really branched out in sophomore year. I got in with all the, the girls who got scholarships and stuff. And I was like, are you kidding me? But I guess...
Was that not your vibe, or what do you mean?
Well...
Because you were a smarty pants.
Yeah, and I think I spoke up in class, and that, made me interesting because a lot of them didn't. I mean, that was the day when girls just did what they were supposed to do.
That doesn't seem like
Except
you.
It wasn't.
Yeah.
I was climbing trees and riding bikes all over the place and doing all kinds of stuff that wasn't typical.
My impression of you from your stories of growing up, even that you've shared on this podcast, is that you were very much like full of piss and vinegar. Is that the expression? Like you're full of energy and your own ideas.
Well, that was very difficult because that was true. And my father really didn't like it.
Which is funny because that's him.
Yeah.
He didn't want himself as his own daughter.
No.
That's hilarious.
I think he would have been okay if it was a son, but it wasn't so good with me. So we got in arguments a lot. And Therese took a look at that
and went a different way?
Thought about it. And she was so docile at home. I mean, I thought that was just her nature. Well, I got on the bus one time later in life, and a couple of girls said to me, "Are you Therese Couture's sister?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, she is so funny. And she started describing her to me. I thought, it must be another person she's talking about. But she had this out-of-house, persona that just I'd never seen.
Oh, how interesting.
And didn't get to know it until we were adults.
She was free to be a different person outside the house, but doing a very purposeful thing in the house.
And she just went along with things. And she one time spoke up to our dad. And he talked about it for years, evidently.
Oh, wow.
Because it was so unusual.
Well, it was so out of character for her house persona.
Been me,
house personality.
Not so much.
Yeah. That was expected.
Yeah. Till I was about 19, and then he started leaving me alone.
Okay, so freshman year, you have your one tiny friend.
I do want to say that detail about Therese makes her story about getting the job at the telephone company and her dad's reaction, her grandpa's reaction to that makes a lot more sense now. If that's their give and take, is that it's just give the entire time, and she shows up and she's like, "I'm good on my own." I think the equation hasn't changed for him. He's still in that same mode.
Yeah, he was very impressed what she was going to be paid, and he was then supportive, which was nice.
Yeah, which was nice.
Because I actually, you're going to laugh, but I really seriously thought about being a doctor.
Wow.
When I was in
wouldn't
high
laugh.
school. And then they weren't taking girls in medical school by any great numbers. So I would have had to be so outstanding that, they would have no excuse to turn me down. And my grades weren't that great. I mean, I got a lot of things, but I wasn't a good student. Oh, well.
For as long as you have been at schools, why don't you have a doctorate by now? Just an honorary one from being on a campus for 50 years of your life.
Well, it's an interesting point because I went and got tested a while after you did when you were in college, and I was in my 50s.
Right. Mom is referring to, I finally realized my sophomore year of college, oh, maybe I'm dyslexic. Maybe that's what's been going on all this time. And finally got tested, and it was confirmed, oh, yeah, that's happening. Both dyslexic and dysgraphic, which is the spelling portion of it, that your brain just can't figure that out and just doesn't have the capacity. So you got tested after that because it probably jarred something for you, maybe that's me too.
I really wanted to know, and we were offered a full battery of tests from the head of the learning disabilities section of Northridge, CSUN. And
when were you? Who offered how? What do you mean?
If we would attend this
class or seminar, maybe.
Yeah, you have to do a certain amount of them when you're teaching, and so.
Oh, so we were offered. It was students who were
it was
teachers.
Just teachers.
Oh, teachers,
because it was just becoming well known.
Right, sort of an awareness of it.
No awareness of it before that. I mean, you had more awareness than I did.
Sure.
And I'm teaching kids. And because of the fact that learning was hard for me, I tuned in a different way than most teachers would. But Anyway, so I got suspicious. Mm-hmm. People said to me for years, "You're so smart, and you can't spell. That's just ridiculous. You need to study harder."
Yeah. I mean, that's
not have
thanks,
done
whoever
me
those
any
people
good.
were.
Well, it just wouldn't have done me any good because the way they went about it doesn't work for someone who's dyslexic. So I found all that out later. But anyway, so I thought, well, I'm going to take this seminar and I'm going to get this free testing
I
by
didn't
somebody
realize
who's
that's how it
really
happened.
good at what
cool.
she's doing. And so I was horrible because I was teaching full time. It was Friday afternoon from 4 to 9.
So it was a seminar for teachers. That's how you...
And it started at 8 o'clock the next morning and went till 4 in
Yikes.
the afternoon. And it was most of the day on Sunday. So that meant you got nothing done on the weekend.
Yeah.
And boy, to give that up is just, maybe if you're single, you could do that. But
You had a lot going on.
I had a lot going on. So I did it anyway. And then she did a full batch, I think it was 6 hours. And so we did it in maybe 2-hour chunks. And I did it in her office with her present. And we got all done. And she had me come back for a consult about it. And she said, from your test scores, I would never know you're dyslexic. The only reason I know is I watched how you do it.
Yeah.
And she said, you have adapted methods that really work for you. Mm-hmm. And she said, I had told her that I was working on a master's at that point, and I'd gotten kind of stuck. And I thought, well, maybe I'm way over my head. And she said, so what I want to say about your goals is, yes, you can definitely finish this master's. I'm sure you can. She said, but I wouldn't go for a doctorate.
Oh, that's interesting.
And I thought,
Don't kill yourself, lady.
well, and so then I've taken a lot of other courses that don't add up to anything academic.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what I'm getting at. Since the masters, it's not like you've stopped educating yourself.
But I've got a bunch of certifications since then.
Mm-hmm.
So it was such an interesting thing to find out at that point in my life. It was like, well, no wonder, And later, when I was going to another thing the whole school went to, that one I just told you about, I was the only one who went because it was just, as I said, devour the whole weekend. But we had a day off for a educational day for the teachers, and I went to the talk on spelling.
Oh.
Because I knew there was something weird about the spelling, and I didn't know what. So the person who was giving it said, now, if you have students who have learning disabilities, do not tell them to write the word 10 times. They will get nothing out of it. If you actually looked at it after you told them that, about the third or fourth word, they're misspelling it again.
Oh, mm-hmm.
So her alternative to that was have them really, really carefully write it down once, checking every letter to make sure it's right. And then have them trace it 10 times.
Oh.
And see what you get. Well, I had kids who were getting D's, D minuses, F's on their spelling tests, and they got A's, and they got 100. And it was like some kind of miracle. I mean, they were so excited, and the rest of the kids were excited because they're always aware of who's flunking these things.
Oh, yeah.
Or what you get on the spelling test, and they won't ever answer or whatever.
Sure.
So it was an interesting experience. And I went away high school. So the first year and the second year were just kind of finding my way about the high school
Lay of the
landscape.
land. Yeah, lay of the land.
And then junior year, I got involved with drama. And I was...
And you don't mean with other girls, like mean girl drama.
No, not that kind. No, I mean part of the, working on a play and so forth.
Wait, before we go off into drama, you mentioned that you were thinking about being a doctor. When was that? And was it the dyslexia you think unknown to you that
No, at that
derailed
point
that?
It was really because I didn't have good grades, so it was going to be hard to get into medical school. And then they weren't letting women in. And my good friend, as you know, who was a friend of mine since 6th grade, Jill, she went to Mexico and got into medical school.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and became fluent in Spanish. She didn't have a lot of the hiccups in the learning process that I did. And she was brilliant. So it was a nice combo. Anyway, but Mexico was letting women in, but not in the United States.
Oh, how
it was
interesting.
Just, very male biased. And so I thought about that, and then I could see that was probably not practical. So I started thinking about, well, maybe I'll be a nurse. Well, my dad thought that was the most terrible idea, blah, blah, blah. And then in junior year, toward the end of the year, I went to a fair that they had on, careers.
Like a career day fair type of thing?
Yeah, yeah. And I thought being a probation officer sounded really interesting.
That is such an interesting turn that things took for you.
Yeah. And then, so I go off to college, and I have my usual problems with English was a problem because of the spelling and because I had teachers that, like, the first guy, freshman and sophomore year, they were males in an all-women's school, and one of them thought Huckleberry Finn was the best piece of literature he'd ever read, and he had us read it. Boring, as far as I'm concerned. It's all about some guy, wandering down the river, and he has an African-American friend, which was very unusual, of course, in that time that it was written. And
how does it relate to an entire class of young women?
The entire class was about it.
It's like
the entire class.
You hired an English teacher, but not for this school. Oops.
Yeah. And then the next one was about Shakespeare, and he just was totally into Shakespeare. And what verse and what act does that come from?
Oh, like quizzing on particulars of where things happen.
I had no clue.
Well, wait, okay, so you're talking about Shakespeare. Go back, sorry to bring you back around. You were talking about theater in junior year. How did that go? You went off on this track to become a probation officer, but you were involved in theater.
Yeah. So,
I like that you're getting in a little earlier than Therese, who didn't start until, her senior year on the play at the end.
The play where she had to...
And then she won the Bank of America Drama Award. I mean, I think Richard was ready to kill her. But anyway, but he was student body president, leader of the band. I mean, he was King Richard. I'll tell you, he was something. Anyway...
That's got to be hard when your twin is just like a rock star. And you're like, oh, but I'm keeping a low profile.
Hear her at all.
Oh, good.
She was like her own person. Thank you. She spoke at Harvard more than once.
What?
Yep. As an
We'll
adult.
have to have her on the pod again.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Well, I would have assumed as an adult, not as a child.
Yes. And, and she never went to college.
Yeah. Well, so that's what's interesting, too. You did go to college, which your dad had basically barred Therese from going. Didn't think that she had any good ideas about what she would do and purpose of going.
He didn't want me to go at all.
Oh.
He didn't want me to go. Why are you doing this? Just learn typing and shorthand and be a help to your husband. That was, I don't know how many times I heard that. But my mom was very... Supportive.
Wow.
And she paid for my first year where I was away out of the house money. I don't know how she managed it, but it was pretty cheap compared to now.
Oh, well, for sure. Now it's just exploded.
Yeah, it was like $250 a month or something for tuition. And then she had to pay for room and board.
Of course, then you end up with a professor who's teaching Huckleberry Finn to a classroom full of girls or women.
My first year in college, I took economics. I thought that was kind of an interesting subject. And I really would get in interesting discussions with him in class. And most of the grade, like probably 30% at least, depended on your paper at the end. And I wrote about the Depression and that it was fueled by people losing faith in the economy. And it just snowballed from there. That it really was a psychological issue when it started. And I did a whole theory and it was an economic theory that he taught us. And it was something about a two-way funnel. You pour in the information, you come to this passing point between the two, and then it becomes generalized. Mm-hmm. And he flunked me. I was like, I sweated over that paper like no other paper I'd ever written. And he said, no, you're wrong. Today, it's common knowledge that that's what did it. Mm-hmm. So, you jerk. Sorry. Anyway, so I didn't.
Well, so far it sounds like college was a good challenge.
Well, it sure was.
Wait, so when was the fair that introduced the idea of becoming a probation officer?
That was in junior year of high school.
Of high school. Okay, so this was
then
pre.
I went to senior year of high school. I have a boyfriend that I got during the summer, and he turns out to be the co-captain of the basketball team that went to the state finals.
Oh, so a real, star.
Straight out of Pleasantville.
Yeah, except my dad got one look at, this looks like these two are really into each other, and he broke us up.
Oh,
Great.
You can't see him anymore, period. And it was sad. And the end point of that story, which comes much later, was even sadder. Anyway, so...
And that's for another time,
that's a
time
tease.
in the pod. We'll
Yeah.
catch that later.
We could just do it now.
Or go for it.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, so we went together starting in the summer. I didn't have a boyfriend before that. And somebody introduced us, this funny guy. I think we called him Toad.
Toad?
That was his nickname, and he didn't mind it, but he really was kind of a toad. And anyway, he introduced us, and, it was like I could hear bells ringing and angels singing. And, I mean, it was just
Wow, okay.
idyllic. And he was total gentleman. Ended up being the oldest of 9 brothers.
Wow, that's a
just
lot.
double
yeah.
checking because I have a little bit of a good memory. This isn't Glendale, is it?
No, Glendale was long distance on the phone. I think we saw each other once after we were introduced.
Okay, just
Glendale was
confirming.
just the boy who lived in Glendale,
Yes,
as far
yes,
as
yes,
we
yes.
know. Okay.
And that was later. I think that was in college or something.
No, that was high school.
Okay. All right. Back to this person.
Okay.
So anyway,
Does this person have a name, or are we not naming him, or we don't remember the name?
well, we'll just start with, I remember the name very well.
Oh, shoot, because it was angel singing. We remember the name.
Yeah, I think if you have a really lovely first love, you don't ever forget
Yeah,
it.
sure.
And so anyway, tried to work with my dad and get him to get off his high horse about this, but it didn't work. So we didn't get to go to the senior prom. We didn't get to go to the senior class party. We didn't get to do all the fun things that are at the end of senior year because when he broke us up was New Year's.
How did he break you up?
He just said, that's it. You're not going to go out with him
Oh,
anymore.
that's enough
and
to
you're
break
not
you
going to
up.
see him
Oh,
anymore.
well, yeah,
and
I
that's
guess.
it. Oh, he was very forceful. So I go off to college, which was, I went to where I went because my best friend Jill was going there.
I think we
And-
need to do more about Jill at some point.
I mean, no
But
wonder
go
why
on
you
with
wanted
this
to
for now.
distance yourself from the Mary. How that last year of high school went. It was like, forget it. I'm Sandy. I don't know who that chick was.
A little bit of it. Anyway, so the rest of that story was he came to a party I was at in my freshman year of college, and I was like,
There he is.
actually, it was the summer after my freshman year. And I thought, wouldn't this be lovely? My dad would hear none of it. And I wasn't ready to move out on my own or, really act.
Were you at home or living in the? You were.
After my freshman year, I was home for the rest of college.
Oh, okay.
And I just wasn't ready to take it all on. So if I'm going to live here, I can't be in the middle of, the Third World War. So anyway,
It would have been a big deal to try and date him again. Yeah.
It would have been, as it turned out, it was terrible. Wait till I tell you what happened with Daddy. Anyway, so that was very sad. So many, many years later, after your dad had died, maybe 3 or 4 years after that, I get a letter from somebody, I don't know who it is, and it has a page with looks like things from people wrote in a yearbook. And it was accompanied by a letter, and it was from him.
Oh.
And I was just in that place in my life when I was maybe thinking I'd date again, or, I wasn't really sure. And I just read this story about the high school romance that they met again later in their 60s, and, they were found love all over again, got married. Mm-hmm. I thought, isn't that lovely? So I'm reading this letter, and it says, my brother found my yearbook when he finally sold his house and got ready to move out. And he gave it to me. and I found what you wrote in my yearbook. And I just wrote you to let you know, if you ever think of getting in touch with me again, don't.
Oh shit. That was
Your
not the
dad
direction.
was a frickin' jerk. I never want to hear from you. I'm still hurt.
Well, that's what's so sad is that 60, so what is that, 40 years after that?
About that.
More than that? He's still heartbroken. Oh, I mean, it was one of the most perfect stories to tell in teaching high school because I told them the whole story and they were all like, and he got in touch with you.
Yeah.
And they could tell that he was very angry. And I said, girls, do not mess around. This is not fair to anybody involved. And boys take it harder than girls sometimes. So this is really serious. Oh, they got it.
Wow.
It was a wonderful teaching story and sad.
Very sad, Mom.
Yeah, very. Anyway, he may have died since then.
Oh, geez.
I wouldn't necessarily have heard, but anyway. So back to, so that's high school.
You don't happen to remember what you wrote in his high school yearbook?
Oh, something about how sad I was that, and I hoped he'd be fine and whatever it was. I don't really remember.
Oh, geez. Okay, wait. So the name? No, you're not going to. Okay.
No.
Okay.
She's not going to dox him, Catherine.
All right. I just wondered, but we're not getting it. Okay.
Anyway,
It was the first with angels.
Angels never really sang again.
Oh.
Now, that doesn't mean
There wasn't love, but
there wasn't love, but it wasn't the first flight.
right. Well,
Anyway.
wait. So then, where was Glendale? Glendale was after that.
No, Glendale was before that.
But it was
Even
not
younger.
angel singing.
It was
Okay.
like sophomore year.
Got it. Okay.
Well, and not a boyfriend. Is that what the line you're drawing?
Well, they dated, but
No, we didn't even really date. We just talked on the phone
Right. Okay.
Okay.
when I was babysitting, so
High
I didn't
interest.
have to explain it to anybody.
Private phone
you're
call.
under the
Yeah,
radar.
but neither of us could drive, and
It wasn't
I would
going
get
anywhere.
Together with, he'd be telling me about the smog in Glendale and that you couldn't even see across the street. And I
Oh,
think-
geez, what?
And we were living in the Palisades. Oh, it's just didn't sound great.
An insurmountable distance.
Yeah, geographically undesirable. GU. So then what happened? So I do okay getting through, and I got into college, which really today I wouldn't have.
Well, wait a minute. Sorry, Catherine. Do you want to ask about the drama, or are we moving on?
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
just
it's
that you-
just the drama was more tech support and that kind of stuff. I didn't.
Tech support. I'm shocked that you weren't just out there treading the boards.
But
Well, that happens later.
I'm not trying to jump ahead, but I know that you continued theater
Yeah.
into college. So it's not like that was I just went and did tech. No, you were learning and got good enough to continue trying it, and eventually you were on stage, right?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Okay.
Well, we're going to get there.
Yeah.
So I didn't do anything about drama my freshman year. I can't remember why. We may not have had a
You
drama
were too small,
department.
and they weren't doing a Christmas Carol. They didn't need a Tiny Tim. Burn.
Well,
That
wait.
wasn't
By
nice.
college, had you grown at all?
I think I was 5'2".
Okay, well, that's where I landed. So
Yeah.
4'11" was the beginning of high school.
Yeah.
So teeny tiny with your teeny tiny friend plus Jill.
Yeah.
Okay, just-
and then a whole group of people who all went to college on scholarships.
Oh, wow.
They were quite an amazing bunch. Anyway, so I get to college, and it was, can you even imagine? Nobody was fighting with me. Nobody was giving me a hard time. I was a crazy person. They gave us all the ground rules when we got there. And one of them was freshmen cannot single date.
Single date. Okay.
Meaning you have to
You have to go
double
in group
date
date.
or
Group
go
date.
in a group. And somehow that didn't really land.
You did what you wanted to do?
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds right.
So anyway, the next week or the week after, I don't know when exactly, I went out on a date by myself.
Uh-oh.
And it was with a rugby player. And he was so cute. And he was a senior at the boys' school that was nearby. Probably had nefarious plans.
Oh, my.
What did they call them? Chicken hawks.
He might have
Chicken-
wanted
a
to
chicken?
scrum with you. We don't know.
Ugh. Chicken hawk. That is not a term that I
A chicken
know.
hawk was, we're already flying. We're so cool. We're seniors. and there's a little chicken. Let's go.
Oh, picking up on the younger ladies.
Easy prey.
Yeah, easy prey. And so
although
anyway,
not with you in any way, I imagine.
oh, well. So anyway, we went to a rugby game, and what was common in those days was after the game was over, they'd share a keg.
Oh, okay.
So, I'm a smart-ass freshman. I think that's a great idea. And so anyway, had a couple of beers probably. And then we ended up doing something else and then going to another party, and I got crazy. And luckily, on the way home, I got sick because that was obviously not part of the plan.
Oh.
And somebody tipped me off to this later. It was like, oh, it was so naive. I mean, it was just so dumb. And
well, you're also going into starting college as a freshman earlier than most,
yeah,
right?
Yeah. And with very little experience because of my dad, for one thing. Anyway, so I got grounded.
Oh.
And what a grounding meant was that you stayed on campus. So we had guys come up there and watch the movies on Saturday night. They had movies for us on Saturday nights.
Well, there you go.
The guys come up, sit there and watch the movie with us.
And we're like
go
a common hall or something?
Yeah,
or?
yeah. And then we'd go play pool. So the next year they changed the rule. Said you couldn't have guys on campus if you were grounded. It was kind of funny.
So they changed that once you left.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't get grounded. I one other time. Oh.
Meaning you only got caught one other time.
I almost got caught when I came back and I got really sick. And seniors who were over 21 and came back high to the dorm got suspended and sent home.
High, you mean not alcohol?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Alcohol. But not out of control at all.
Okay. Buzzed, maybe, is the term.
Yes. And the nurse on campus, who one of my friends got to come down to see me and say if she could help me, decided not to report me. If I'd gone home,
Oof.
my dad would have had the ultimate, weapon.
Trump card to play against you. Yeah.
So I was relieved of that. Anyway, so I had a wonderful time.
You sound like a little bit of a wild card.
Oh, I was. Well, it was so repressive at home.
Oh, yeah.
That, it was just like I'm out of jail.
Yeah. You had a bit of a rumspringa your freshman year.
So then I had to go to school near home the next year because my mother had come up for a visit. And she saw I was having so much fun and my grades weren't good. She decided this was not a good investment.
Wait, what do you mean closer to home? Are these two different schools? Where'd you go to college?
I went to Holy Names in Oakland.
Catherine, you don't remember.
No, shut up. I just always think that she's talking about Mount St. Mary's.
No.
Oh.
I was away my freshman year.
Did she say this? This episode?
Our whole life? Yes.
What is the name of the first?
More attention at that
That
point.
is very possible. I also love that people are like, no, we have definitely told you this story. And I'm like, no, you haven't. Doesn't matter because I have a reputation for a terrible memory. So it doesn't ever count if I say, no one told me this. But anyway.
That's okay.
Well, it's also like the majority of college isn't at this first college. So if it's mentioned in the moment of, oh yeah, the freshman year where I was staying away at Blip, that'll be the entire mention for the whole conversation of all college things. Because it's just I stayed there. But at there, and then never mentioning it again, college. And then it was from home, college. So I also don't really have that locked down. Just that freshman year was not at home.
Yeah, I was almost
not at home, not at Mount St. Mary's.
But I didn't have that exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I was almost going to say to you when you were talking about your English teachers, I was like, you're lining them up as if they're the same place or the same curriculum, but the freshman year was a totally different college. It
Yeah,
just
John
happened
knew this 100%.
That you didn't like either.
No.
Okay.
Well,
Anyway.
I was going to be an English major, which would have been a disaster because I can't read fast. Mm-hmm. And they gave you voluminous amounts of reading.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
part of the dyslexia. You have to really take longer.
Oh, way
And
longer.
You have to really. I waited for everybody to go to bed when I was living away in Oakland.
Well, that's because you wanted to socialize and do a bunch of things.
Yeah. But I also could not study with people around. I mean, it was terribly distracting for me. Not in a way like I'm so annoyed with you. Oh, you want to have a conversation? Sure.
Well, I definitely find even just about dyslexia, you literally can't be doing anything else if you are trying to read something. It takes your whole brain to like look at those words and decipher them into, and basically I have to turn it into audio in my head. That's
Exactly.
That's
exactly.
It's a weird process.
And listen to it and take it in. I mean, that's like a 4-step process.
People who aren't dyslexic don't do that, and I cannot understand what they are doing when they're reading.
Yeah, it's with Katherine, what we've noticed as a group when we're working and when she's writing on her computer, it's like, no, don't talk to her.
Oh, I can't.
Because she's got to focus on what she's writing. So similarly, it's funny, this just happened. So, Mom, you were, doing your Bible study classes and you got to write your
presentation?
Right, yeah.
I have to do a handout for every presentation that I do.
So we've developed this whole, 77-step process.
Which is a perfect amount of steps.
Yeah.
So how many steps you want to do every time?
So this newest incarnation of the process is that
iteration is the right word.
Great. Yeah, I mean, this is a serious subject. So she is going to write out her entire thing separate, because what she does her notes, which ended up, they're notes, so they're a little dirty.
Chaotic.
And they're not how you would say it as a presentation or write it as a handout.
Sure.
So then she's now going to rewrite it all as a actually cleaned up, because then I can just type it without her telling me what to type, because otherwise I have to have her interpret the notes. So we've done that now twice. And so this last time, this one, she had really worked hard on it. It was very cleaned up, actually ready to this is 98% whatever, ready. This could just be the handout almost. But as I'm doing it, it really reminded me of looking at something you had written, Katherine, and you're missing, these two words are transposed. Instead of it should be they are walking, but it would be they walk are. And I'm like, wait, what? What does that mean? And I'm like, oh, right. It's supposed
Katherine
to be
wrote this.
They are walking.
Yeah.
I mean, John is my complete backup, double check reader, and very good at understanding the kind of mistakes that I make when I am, particularly if I'm trying to write fast and just get something down, and then he has to almost decipher it. And he's such a good reader that he often is completely tripped up by what I have done because it's so weird and wrong. He's like, wait, what? Oh, okay, hold on. All right, she must mean. And then often after I've written something of, length, we have to have a whole session where he goes through and go okay, I found this. Did you mean this? Yes, check. Okay, I found this. Did it mean this, or did you mean this, or were you planning on this and then this happened? Because I'll also, as I'm rewriting in my head, there's two different versions, and sometimes half of something gets left in there, which is
that's
bonkers.
Yeah. So what the other thing that's happening is you're writing it on a computer. So right, you're totally able to, okay, I'm writing it and then I've changed my idea and now I'm going to rewrite it or something. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, then something might get left over, like you said. But then with Mom writing it, I didn't say this, but she's writing it just longhand on paper.
Sure.
Because that's the whole thing that I'm helping is I'm doing the typing. And it's oh, yeah, this is not as easy for you to reorganize, but it seems like you changed the idea of what the sentence was going to be at this point. And it was okay, it was going in this direction, then we shifted. It was all right, well, we got to marry those two ideas now. Or, there's words that are necessary to get those two back together.
Figure something out, yeah.
He's got a great technique.
You've over shorthanded yourself.
I
lopped something out.
What happens, the last time, I really tried to do a finished,
written document. And when he went through and he had a question, he just highlighted it. And so then when I read it, I could edit it really easily. You know what you meant when you look at it, even if it's wrong, which is me too.
Yeah.
I know, not only do I know what I meant, I know what the process was that caused it to be messed up in that way. Because I remember the process of writing it and what happened. Very interesting. Wait, this is a little side note for me. You're doing these Bible study classes where you do a presentation. Is that once a month? How often is this happening that you're doing these presentations?
Good question.
Endless. The Bible is endless. It just goes in a loop.
Well, right, but there's multiple people in this class or whatever, so it's not always you.
3 presenters, but 2 classes. One's in the evening.
What?
Well, so
how
it's
often is this happening, you crazy lady?
So there are people that are working during the day, so they can't come, so they're at night. And then the people that can come during the day come the next morning. So you'd think, you make a presentation
Do it for
Monday
both.
night, and then on Tuesday morning, you make it again. But that's not how it works.
Why? What?
Because the whole idea of this Bible study is to let people ask the questions they have.
It's at the speed of the class that you're in, so they're at different speeds, so they're not presenting the same
it's
thing.
like if you had a car and the wheels on the right were going 45 miles an hour.
You're going
and
in a circle, lady.
Oh, it's just nutsy. I haven't quite handled it yet.
Well, yeah. So, and yeah, because I mean, this has only been truly going for, I don't know, 6 months or something.
Yeah.
So, separate from that, there are 3 presenters. So we'll come back to that in a second. But right, there's almost, as a teacher, right, you're constantly like, okay, well, I'm with the students, but I'm also planning ahead. Well, now, similar to commonly with teachers, you have different classes. So now this is same subject, different classes. So I'm now in 3 places.
Oh, for goodness
I'm ahead
sake.
with where I need to go to teach. I'm with wherever this class is, and then I'm with wherever the second class is.
Oh, my.
So
It's
super fun.
wild.
But yeah, so this 3 presenter thing, you know, it's almost like every 6 weeks, but then sometimes it feels like 3 weeks. It's
Well, how often
it
do the
never
classes
gets to be
meet?
3 weeks. The best is you get a real 2-week break.
which
Oh.
ends up being, because she likes to do a ton of research. I mean, there's, you know, there are
constantly going
so
on is what's
many
happening.
books she's using to do this. It's crazy.
Mom, you are nuts.
So yeah, so that 2 weeks is like, well, that's about the time it takes you to do this presentation.
Because it's weekly, so if there's 3 presentations, you're on every 3
Well,
weeks.
and besides which, since I started, one or the other of us has almost always been gone on a vacation, on a trip to see the dying brother. You know, I started, and the other woman went on a tour of the United States for 2 months. So I was on like every week.
Oh, God.
It was crazy. Anyway,
It was rough.
yeah. And,
Wowzers.
And I can't really type.
Oh, I hear you.
And so, poor John came upstairs and says, sounds like you're having trouble with them.
Well, it's strange because, you know, it's also, you know, when someone sees someone else doing something. So, like, Ed will sometimes, you know, be around and see her doing something. So I think he helped out first. And then I heard later, I was like, and then it's always, you know, what we always tell you is like, if you are frustrated and something is taking you forever, ask for help. Because, like, yeah, you typing this thing for 3 hours is not the correct method to do this.
No, because he
is-
can get done in an hour.
Oh, yeah.
I can't even read that much.
I was just gonna say, and also, it feels like we're almost in the era where you could just use, like, you know, voice to text dictation. But one of our favorite sketches from SNL is the old people
Oh
asking
my God.
Alexa / any random name that starts with an A.
Or, you know,
Alexandria.
Yeah. Lexius. You know, it was just like, I can come up with quite a lot of
Yeah.
names.
That sketch, where then the eventual response is, you know, I don't think so. So I don't imagine it going well, you either typing or doing voice to text to get these papers done. So John is very, very helpful. John is the in-between voice to text.
Yeah, you would try to set up the voice to text, but you know, and it should have worked. But you know, that's part of the interesting thing is being so now really ingrained in her process to a degree. It's like, oh well, you know, trying to make this happen in a better way or more orderly way. It's like, not that voice to text wouldn't help, but it's like, yeah, but that the final step is not really the problem. You know, it's also like you need to do these other steps better. Come on.
Can you imagine getting through college with that kind of...
Okay, so back to
How
college.
did either of us do that?
It's amazing that we did. I want to get to meeting Dad, though. So that happened during college, though, right?
Sophomore year.
Okay, so you're involved in theater. That's one of the connections that we were getting back to.
Okay, wait, right. And now that I know that there's 2 different campuses, whatever happened with anybody at the first campus, nobody went to the second
Oh, of course
school
I
with
fell
you,
in
right?
love with somebody, you know. But his
Where, at
sister
the
died.
first school?
Yeah.
Okay.
And his sister died, and his
Oh,
parents
geez.
didn't tell him, and he went home for Christmas and found out. Never came back.
Oh, God.
You know, we were way too young.
That is
But-
horrible.
Yeah, he had a very, very traumatic freshman year.
Oh.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. And then I came to the Mount because the Mount was just around the corner.
Mount St. Mary's, sure.
We lived on Sunset, and I had to get a ride, but it wasn't a big deal because
Yeah,
half
it was
the
just sort of-
student body came
yeah.
that way.
Sure. Anybody could pick you up.
Yeah. And I had wonderful friends from that.
I guess, you know what? That just clicked in right now. That's your old hood. of course that makes sense that you would invite all of Liz's friends to ride their bikes along PCH, which is like, yeah, that was like 2 miles from my house back in the day.
Yeah.
Not a big deal. You want to ride over Mulholland, same diff for us. But back in her day, it feels like, oh, yeah, that's exactly what you do. And then Liz's experience that was harrowing.
Oh, it was crazy. Okay, so you're at Mount St. Mary's.
And I got involved with the drama department in my sophomore year. And I saw Dad, but I didn't know him.
So
but
at this point,
every girl at school knew the guys playing in the plays because they were on campus a lot.
Right, because Mount St. Mary's is all girls.
It's all girls.
Point. I'm assuming it's co-ed now, but
no, it isn't.
What?
No.
Really?
It's the only all-women's college west of the Rockies in the United States.
Okay. Wow. All right. So all girls. So they're bringing in boys to be involved in these plays.
Yeah, it was a man that was head of the drama department, and he just wasn't about to use women to play men's parts, and he wasn't going to be limited, to all.
To what plays he was going to do.
Yeah, so he was really fun and interesting, and I had a kind of minor part in the sophomore year.
Do you remember what play?
No.
Not really?
But I remember when I really got to know Dad, I met him, I guess it was in my sophomore year. Trying to figure it out. Anyway, he was in one act play and I was in another.
Oh, so you weren't in the same play, but...
And I'm not going to tell you, because I'm watching the time, what our first real encounter was.
Why? What?
Because moving home and moving to a day hop position was such a traumatic and dramatic change.
Yeah,
and
from being on campus all day to just bailing on the whole college experience and going to the home again every day. It was
and
like,
I didn't go home most of the time because
you went to work.
When I was 16, I was volunteering at St. John's Hospital, and I was having the best time. I loved it. I loved the setting. I liked the people, and I worked it out. So I was doing 3 volunteer jobs when I was there. So I was there almost all day, and my dad bought the cafeteria at that point. And he said, well, if you can volunteer at St. John's Hospital, you can volunteer here.
Oh, geez. Not really the same.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, no. I mean, you'd go home and you'd smell like what you'd been,
Cooking.
serving.
Sure.
And besides which, then you'd work all day and you'd be really tired. And you had an 11:30 curfew and you just had to have a shower before you went out. I mean, it was awful.
Aww.
It really was. So I liked school. So I liked the amount of college experience that I was having. I was playing bridge, which finally I had to give up because our favorite couple to play bridge with after we got married, so I played all the way through the rest of my college years, was a guy who, after 2 rounds of bidding, he knew where all the cards were.
Oh, he was a smarty pants.
Card counting's not fun in a fun game.
Well, that's the whole idea of bridge. But so I'm sort of lost how you're tying this together. You were talking about day hop and that being traumatic, and then because that relating to high school when you then were working at the cafeteria.
And then I went back to working at the cafeteria. And my father said, if you want to continue college, you can pay at least half of your tuition.
What, out of your money from the cafeteria?
Yeah, I made 50 cents an hour.
Oh, geez.
And a lot of people didn't tip me when I was doing the counter in the front because, she's the owner's daughter. We don't have to tip her.
Oof,
It
bummer.
was just horrible. Yeah, it was not a happy. I remember thinking if I had had to do this for 4 years, I never would have made it, because by the time I was almost, 2/3 of the way through junior year, I thought, I can hardly stand this. This is just awful. And by that time, I think I was dating Dad, and it just was terrible. And I thought, if I had to look to 2 more years of this, it'd be too much. But I only have 1 more year, and I can do it. And he even came in 2 months before the end of my senior year and said, I was up doing a paper, and Frank was typing, and the big joke I always had with people later was I had to marry him.
Oh.
And people would go. And I said he typed all my papers.
Exactly.
And everybody would go, oh, yeah.
Well, I do want to get through meeting Dad. Okay, so you're doing 2 different plays. You're both in theater.
Okay.
Or he's come in to do
I'm
theater.
I'm going to give you the first part of the story, the first half of the story, and then another time I'll give you the other half.
Okay.
As has been said here before, I was not on time for everything in the world for a long time. And by the way, I'm very good about it now.
I was the last person to arrive for the podcast today, but I also take after my mother, so.
Anyway, so I thought, I'm going to get up to the makeup room early so I have time because I was the first person on stage. And I get up there, and the makeup room is jammed with people who all had the same idea and were sooner than I was.
I'm going to get there early, probably an actual, like, on time. And it's like, oh, well, everybody else also.
already here.
So they all got finished, and I had about like 10 minutes or something to do my makeup.
And is this the first play that you're both...
It was the first play when he was in a play and I was in another play on the same stage.
So
now
it's this one act play. I'm just wondering if this was, you had seen him around before for other things, or this was the first time.
No.
First time.
He had been in something I hadn't been in the year before.
Got it. But other people knew him, but this was your first exposure to...
And now this is a performance, or this is still rehearsal?
This is the opening night.
Opening night.
Pressure's
And-
on.
And, I can't remember how this worked. But anyway, so he comes by, walks across the door to the makeup room, and I see him, and I say, Frank. And he goes, yeah? And I said, can you get me a cup of coffee? And he said, no. And he kept going, and he didn't. I thought, what a shit. You know?
So that's a good start. You guys really hit it off.
A real red flag because he really never did.
I don't know if that's considered a meet cute. Get me a cup of coffee. No, goodbye.
No, see, that's the fallacy of the romantic comedy, because that's like the first quarter of the meet cute is like, oh, well, there's a disagreement, but then there's more, you know.
The later.
The next thing that happened was there was a guy named Francis who was also in one of the plays. And so I came up to him after one of the performances or something. And I said, Francis, could you give me a ride home? Oh, I said, Francis, honey, could you give me a ride home?
Oh, honey.
He was so sweet. He was married and, it was not a pickup line at all. And he said, you're going to have to ask the other Francis, honey, because I came with him.
So Dad had brought that. So Frank, our dad, had brought Francis, and now you're asking Francis brings you back to Dad.
Yeah.
Okay, go on.
So he did drive me home.
All right.
Now, this was a separate performance, or is it the same one?
I can't tell. I mean, it's a little bit long ago.
That's all right. I'm just asking.
I wasn't 20 even.
Just asking.
Hello. I mean, I think I turned 18 in freshman year in April. So this was the spring of sophomore year, or maybe it was the fall of sophomore year.
That you asked him for the ride home? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or when this play thing
So
got
I was
going.
19,
Wow.
And by this point, sophomore year, you're no longer going by Sandy. That was a freshman year experience only.
Just isolated to, I was home again.
Yeah.
That was going to be too confusing with my family. So...
Well, and then, were there like people from high school that you're now re-interacting with again?
Yeah. And nobody that I knew from Oakland was in the area.
Yeah.
So he gave me a ride home that time, and then we had the no coffee incident. And
wait, was it in that order? Was it the no coffee incident first or the ride first?
I think I don't know. It's so long ago, I can't keep them straight.
You usually say the no coffee first.
Was the first thing.
Normally, you don't really mention the ride thing, so I don't know.
Well, Francis, who put me back in touch with Dad, was really a talented actor.
Oh.
It was wonderful. And he never, ever clicked. He never got a job. And that happens to a lot of people.
Oh, that happens to a lot of people.
Hollywood, really. Very interesting guy. I think he played in Wuthering Heights, and he was, remind me if anybody here knows the
Wuthering Heights, is that Katherine and
Heathcliff?
Heathcliff. And he
Heathcliff.
looked like you expected Heathcliff to look, and he sounded like it, and he was just wonderful. And then he did something else that was semi-comedic, and he was great. And it was like, why is this guy getting no jobs? And Frank was getting jobs at that point. quite a bit.
Well, you just need to look young and have a Navy uniform.
Yeah, evidently.
Oh, that was okay.
Evidently.
So we can put a pin in it there. So you've met Dad, but that has
And
not really kicked it
not
off.
gotten a coffee.
Yeah,
So
no coffee.
Neat, not cute.
Semi ride home, and that's where we're going to leave it.
Okay.
Okay.
'Cause there's a wonderful denouement. on
Well,
that.
I mean, I would hope so.
You're
'cause
all sitting here.
I mean,
for one
you
thing.
ended up with them, so I would hope this goes in a better direction at some point.
It becomes hilarious. As a matter
Okay,
of
well, that becomes hilarious. That's a good tease, Mom. I like it. Okay, well, thank you all for listening. And please, you can follow us on all of our social media at Family DynamiKs with a K. And we have a Patreon. You can find us on Patreon and become a patron, sort of an honorary family member, and hear all the other little stories that don't make it onto the podcast that we sort of hold back because they're either slightly not for every audience or just extra
I was
long.
thinking I really ought to get on that so I can find out.
Yeah, you want to hear some of the inside Scooby-Doo stories.
Yeah.
You would have no idea. Oh, you've probably heard them some other way.
There,
Yeah,
there
maybe.
needs to be like a version of Patreon where like you give away the sponsorship, but it's like because it's your parent, so it's your Matreon.
Oh, we could do a gift of a
Yeah,
Patreon
yeah.
to our mom. Anyway, everybody else, please
Gotta
join
pay.
us on Patreon. Yeah. It's that very high $3 a month requirement. Okay. Thank you for listening to
Family
Family
Dynamics.
Dynamics.